had a moment, and it's always these simple moments of hanging my laundry on a line. And I had a thought just float through, like, I don't need anything else. It was like a moment of like recognizing true contentment, just the pure pleasure of being alive.
Shannon Kelly, good morning.
Good morning, Sheila.
I'm glad to be here with you. And I'm so excited to talk to you about the big, crazy, beautiful truths about loving ourselves back into our lives. You have intimate relationship to this and to yourself. Thank you for coming on.
Thank you so much for having me.
You are the founder of Coaching Raw. So you have your own podcast where you are coaching raw and you're just meeting people where they are and you're doing that real time, no pressure. And you've got so much experience to back it. You've been a coach for almost 20 years. You're senior faculty at the Coactive Training Institute, which I just think sounds like a lot of fun. Is that a lot of fun?
It is a lot of fun. Yeah. It really is always fun every time I do it. I've probably led, 150 to 200 courses for CTI, and each one is really a joy.
So great. Yeah, it's where I wish I had done my training, which is why I plugged into all the teachers and all the things and all the places after the fact. You reside full-time at Sonoma Ashram.
I do.
And you're a practitioner of Agar yoga?
Agor.
Thank you. What's distinct about that?
Well, it is an ancient lineage, all the way back to Shiva, was an Agori. And it's very simple and practical. And really, its only tenet is you're not separate from all that is.
Beautiful.
Yeah. So we do our practice, and hopefully that spills over into some sacred service for the world. And yeah.
Nice. Oh, so you're also on the board of directors at the ashram, founding board member for Coaching for Everyone. I was so excited to see about this. So it's a nonprofit dedicated to democratizing the coaching industry, which is of high value, high service, providing coaching and coach training to people who identify as Black, Brown, people of color, and or Indigenous. So how long has that been in place now?
That actually got started in 2020. And I'm no longer formally involved, but of course I'm always cheering from the sidelines. But it was a beautiful initiative. They have partnered with quite a few different coaching schools. And I know I had the thrill of my life training several cohorts of folks going through the coactive training. So
nice.
Yes. So we unleashed a whole new group of folks to the larger world who are doing amazing things in the world and might not have had the opportunity otherwise to get expensive coach training. So,
right. And it is expensive.
It is expensive.
It's so true.
Yes.
Yeah, and especially if we're, staying up with the continuing education and all of those things, it continues to be expensive.
Definitely a profession of privilege, both in who gets to do it and who gets to obtain it. So Coaching for Everyone was really, an attempt to ameliorate that somewhat. Yeah.
Well, let's drop into this idea of loving ourselves back into our lives. What I know about that is that it implies, and this is very intentional on my part, it's a return from something else, a time when we weren't present in our lives, where we weren't loving ourselves in our lives. And so when we think about that, where we're coming from, what comes up for you in your story, the before you loved yourself back into your life?
I think what I would call the second phase of my life had a lot of highs and lows. My young adult life. I was on my version of the rat race. I mean, I was a social worker, but I was in a leadership role. I was sort of climbing a system that was fairly corporate, in its execution. I was married to a wonderful person who I still love in many ways. And I was living in a big city, Boston, didn't own a car for 20 years. So, my free time was spent eating wonderful food and going to, plays and, enjoying everything city life had to offer. And yet there was something missing for me, you know? So I think that this phase of my life has really been about finding the meaning, finding the true meaning of this human life. Why did I take this birth? And so that's an ongoing practice,
Yeah.
ongoing looking.
So, what was the pivot point for you in terms of you recognizing something was missing? Did you know all along, or was there a moment in time?
Sheila, the funny thing is, I feel like I was a pretty unhappy kid and adolescent. I was rebelling always. I wasn't quite sure against what sometimes, but I never quite felt like this world was made for me. And, of course, the circumstances of my family all lined up to make sure that that was reinforced.
As happens.
As happens, exactly.
Yes.
And so, finding that second phase of life was actually at the time, in the beginning of it, hugely nourishing, important. So in some ways that was a rebirth, a reclamation of, the tiniest me who had started out pretty happy-go-lucky and then, insensitive, and then, life had its way with me. But then, it's like I outgrew it. There was always something more deeper. And so I had an experience, I had several experiences that sort of pointed me to something a little more mysterious, something beyond or beneath the human experience. And, when you have a taste of what I would call, sort of capital T truth about our interconnectedness, and you can't really unring that bell. So, I on some level kind of dismantled a lot of my life as it was and opened to new pathways.
Do you think that you were, on reflection, always aware of the more? Or did it require a moment that it got your attention?
I think I was always aware of it, but it had been put in. For me, I think I was always a spiritual being. I always was very, very attached to nature, animals, and imagination. And I was a sensitive, weird little girl. But then I went to Catholic school, and I went to and religion, and it didn't make any sense at all to me. It did not align with the love that I felt for everything. It was a stern rule book. And so I rebelled. No, this is nothing. Who is this mean? I remember, Sheila, I had this record set with like a biblical record set with the little book. You would go bong and you'd turn the page.
I remember.
And
Yep.
God in it was represented by a thunderclap and a very stern, angry male voice. And I wanted zero part of that. With 6 older brothers and a father who was a general, I didn't want another guy yelling at me.
No.
So I
Wow.
really pushed all of that out and embraced what I would consider, an agnosticism, atheism at times. And I looked around at what was happening in the world and couldn't reconcile all of that with what I imagined God to be, which was sort of a arbiter of fairness and justice, you know? And anyway, that was a very long-winded response to a question that was, yes, there were always glimpses. You know, I mean, I did psychedelics before, you know, the recent resurgence. So, you know, I was in college, you know, dropping acid and doing mushrooms and smoking plenty of weed. And, you know, certainly had some profound experiences doing that. But even without doing that, there were these moments of seeing the more. And I turned away from them, you know, but something that happened in 2009 made it unmistakable for me to keep turning away.
Do you feel like saying, is it timely or appropriate to talk more about 2009? Or
Yeah, I'm happy to.
what happened? Yeah.
You know, I mean, God bless CTI. It's like I found CTI, which is the Coactive Training Institute, and what I teach for now. And, you know, they had a wonderful way of synthesizing what I would consider to be the best of, you know, many wisdom teaching traditions, and, you know, really helping people work with each other through this. And one of the things that they have is a 10-month leadership program, which is a container for personal growth and just exploration of, you know, experiential learning of all kinds. And there was I won't give it away because you know, we want people to do it and be surprised by it. But, but there was a day where everything kind of slowed down, and I was out in nature by myself, very quiet, not distracting myself from anything. And I just had this unmistakable sense of, again, it's really hard to put into words, but
Of course.
a moment where I would say, you know, other people have said the veil dropped, or you know, where it really became clear that I was just a part of this fabric of everything, you know, and it was a beautiful, profound experience. And of course, as we do, the mind comes in, takes over, and says, I want more of this. Like, oh, how do I feel like this all the time? And what do I do to get this? And, you know, so then I started chasing more spiritual experiences,
Yep.
you know, and probably on some level still do that, you know, but anyway, that set me on what I would consider phase 3 of my life, which was really the established in a good enough sort of career space. And, you know, I decided to sort of fulfill some long held dreams. You know, I moved to California. I had already found, or I found shortly after that opening experience, I had found the ashram. And so I had visited many times. And then in 2019, I was asked to move in. I actually have a, you know, 2-bedroom apartment here. And so since then, I feel like my main focus really is both the sort of day-to-day practice, but also letting the fruits of that spill out to my personal clients, to all of the people who come from all over the world to this place. And, you know, as much as I can, I try to live a life of service, you know, providing people a space of peace where they can get quiet and, you know, retreat from the heat of life a little bit.
Beautiful. I so appreciate, and I feel it in my lungs, actually. I feel it in my breath. It's interesting, this idea of peace, the opportunity to really get quiet. And one of the things that I know for me is when I have had to be so intentional about finding quiet, it's rushed. I'm like, okay, I'm going to book this in. I'm going to get 10 minutes of quiet. It'll be great.
Yeah.
And then we'll be done and we'll get back to all the things.
Yeah.
As opposed to these spaces which are more true to my own design, which are more true, you know, my childhood, I would describe similar to your, in terms of my makeup. It was nature, it was mountains. I was running around in the woods barefoot, not worried about the splinters and, you know, those kinds of things. and breaking bones falling out of trees, right? That's what it was. And so it was living in and inhabiting that quiet and allowing that quiet to inhabit me.
Yes.
And so I feel that for me, as I went through my deconstruction of a lot of the religious training and kept some of the best of it, there's some beautiful things about prayer, for example, that I really love and have hung on to. But really that going through that deconstruction and returning to just appreciating and valuing the quiet, to get into that place where it's enough of a practice that I can find it in the middle of the mayhem.
That's right. That's right. That's it.
But it took me till my 40s.
Well, I mean, gosh, I still figure it out every day. I live in an ashram and I can't find the stillness sometimes. So, I mean, unless you're very few people who've ever walked this earth, it's a daily practice. It's a minute by minute practice sometimes.
Yes, so true. So what's it like to live at an ashram?
Oh gosh. I mean, I always joke and say, it's really is true that wherever you go, there you are. So if my mind is quiet and I'm paying attention, it's bliss. If I'm caught in a story of why am I washing pots when I could be out in the world doing all kinds of interesting things or whatever, right? Then I suffer. So I mean, so, what it's like though, really when you get out of that space is, it's every day is so different. We've had people, we've had many, many guests here in the last week, and then everybody kind of left yesterday, and then it was a little quieter. And, to be with a living guru who walks the talk I mean, truly the talk of be a good human being first, is, I don't know how I got so lucky. But I'm grateful for it, and it took me a while. I mean, I was very suspicious because I'd watched all the documentaries and
Yep.
but, so even hearing the word guru when I first came here, I was kind of like, but, there is actually a thousands and thousands and thousands of year tradition. And this is, someone who comes from that thousands and thousands of years tradition. So, and it's an interesting balance of being a Westerner, but being also steeped in, we're always trying to figure out how to bridge culture because many Indians come here, many, and many people from cultures all over the world. And, it's very different to be here than to be in the ashram that we run in India, for example,
Yes,
so it's,
I bet.
yeah. So it's a lot. There's a lot of much more activity, I think, than people would imagine. Like, I'm not on retreat all the time. Right. When people come here, they're on retreat and, they're guests and, but there's actually quite a lot of activity that happens every day here, kind of behind the scenes.
Yeah. Well, I'm struck, Shannon, by this idea of, and I don't think I've said this a lot, but there have been moments in my life where I'm like, I just want to run away to an ashram, right? And it becomes in our imagination, especially I think in the Western imagination, when we're hungry for that thing we cannot name, to run away, and it smacks a little bit of hiding, a lot of escape, and a little bit of, okay, I'm open, but I don't know to what exactly.
Yes. And I joke all the time that, like, why didn't I find an ashram in a cave in the Himalayas? Because we are like in the thick of everything in terms of,
are.
Yeah. And just even in terms of, people who come here, they come here to, we have lots of people coming in. We're not monastic. I mean, my Baba is a monastic monk, but he's the only one. The rest of us are in the world of the world doing, and so, sometimes I have to take, like, I'm actually doing a retreat this weekend at our other site. and like a personal retreat. And so besides teaching a little yoga, most likely, I'm determined to be on retreat. You know?
Wonderful. Yeah.
Yeah.
I wonder when we think about this idea of, you know, being of service, this is something I know that matters very much to me, is that my, not just my work and my labor, but also my presence be of service. And when I think about the crazy, beautiful truth, this is something that got me through many really hard days in my life when I was dealing with depression or autoimmune disease, health crises, things like that, that got my attention. This vague idea I held in the back of my mind, there is a crazy, beautiful truth at play. I am not clear on it. It is wiser than me. And me and my gigantic imagination are very, very small with it relative to the scope of creation.
Yep.
And so I think about being in that kind of space where we imagine you're on retreat all the time, right? And no pots need washing.
Right. They magically just wash themselves.
That's exactly
Sheila.
right. Yes. You know, what are you learning about living? You mentioned earlier that you have been on a quest to discover the true meaning of life for you, the true meaning of your life, I imagine, and life at large. What do you know now?
Yeah, it's so great. I think that I'll point to just a couple of moments. Like I had a moment maybe a year ago, and it's always these simple moments. I'm hanging laundry, you know, my laundry on a line, and I had a thought just float through, like, I don't need anything else. It was like a moment of like recognizing true contentment. And for someone like me with the constitution that I have, you know, I'm an Enneagram 4, if you know what, you know, and you're always looking for what's missing, you know, and
Yes,
contentment, you know, in your mind, you're like, contentment, ew, you know, give me some drama, give me some like highs and lows. But I just had this moment, I guess in Enneagram language, we'd call it equanimity, but just this, you know, just the pure pleasure of being alive. And without thinking about anything, you know, so that hanging that laundry was as exquisite as, you know, some of the more profound experiences that I've paid for or had, or, you know, and so I think it's just a growing level of appreciation, contentment, end of seeking more, you know, really just appreciating what I already have and who I already am. And, you know, I'm sure some of that is coming with age, but I do think that the simple practices that I'm grounded in here every day are extraordinarily helpful, you know, for someone like me or for someone like anyone, really.
Right.
So, yeah.
And I, you know, as a fellow 4, in the, I don't quite want to call it a quest. That's too effortful, but this relationship to equanimity. I know that one of the things for me is that when I land in it, I feel like I'm inside of a container in which all things are true.
Yeah.
And I'm not attaching to any one of them. And so when we talk about this idea of being fully alive, being connected to our vitality, our curiosity, our courage, our joy, so often I find that other people's lenses, when they hear that, mean it must be an ecstatic experience all of the time.
Right.
Right? Like if I'm alive, that means I'm hyper and I'm spazzy and I'm the equivalent of acid or psychedelics.
Right.
Right? That's living. It's the jumping out of a perfectly good plane. It's the leaping off cliffs into water. Right? All of that.
Like crossing stuff off the bucket list. Like,
completely. Yeah. And I'm like, I don't want a bucket list. I want to live every breath.
Yes.
I want to live every breath.
Yep.
And so this word equanimity was really good medicine for me when I actually started to be in relationship to it. And so I really love the invitation. And so to the listener, I really invite you to notice, what is the simplest thing, the simplest act that you do that might bring you into that moment of, look at my body living me. Look at this breath breathing me. Look at these hands in operation, hanging laundry or doing dishes. Whatever it is, that it doesn't always have to be these big, grand, poetic moments.
No. And notice what gets in the way of every moment having its own poetry. And for me, what I noticed was it's some story about how there's something better than this. I shouldn't have to do that. It's a story of little Shannon. And I don't mean little like young, but like, the personality, the one who thinks a certain way about herself, the one who wants to be something, like the more I want to be something, the less I actually am something.
Oh, say that again.
Let me see if I can. The more I want to be something,
Yeah.
the less I actually am something.
Fact.
Yeah.
Yeah, that just feels really true. And especially with the vice of the four being that envy or comparison or
Totally.
what else is there? What else is possible? What could I be? Oh, shoot, I should have.
Exactly.
Which always struck me as rather than inhabiting the possibility, oh, well, maybe that's informative and use it as a compass, looking backwards and go, well, why didn't I do? Why didn't I become?
Right. Right.
And so these voices in our heads too, I think, really interfere with our connection to ourselves and that vitality, curiosity, all of the things that I mentioned before. Creativity, courage.
Absolutely.
love it.
These thinking minds are brilliant. I mean, that's how we survived. I'm sure we're not strong enough to, we our minds are there for a reason, but when it turns into that I am my mind and what it thinks, that's when we get lost
Right.
in the wilderness of the mind.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
how would you respond to somebody, again, it will use Enneagram language. If we're looking at the head types, for example, you look at that 8, 9, and 1, and you think, okay, how do you draw that into, say, heart space? How do you support or coach or invite our headier brothers and sisters into a heart space or a body space?
Body space. Yeah. I mean, I think it really is about helping people drop. First of all, it's just knowing I'm telling myself a story. I'm watching a movie. I'm analyzing myself. I remember one time I went to Baba, early days, and I had come to this great thoughtful insight. And I was telling him all this, and he's like, Shannon, stop analyzing yourself. In a very kind way. But,
Yes.
he's like, cultivate sweetness of heart. I know. And for whatever reason, that got in. I mean, I'm still remembering it, and that was at least probably 8 years ago. And so, it's little things, like little pointers like that. But I do think the person has to be ready to hear it. They have to, on some level, I feel like us fours are lucky because we are always, not always, we know the void. We know what it's like to look into darkness and sense that there's no way out of it. So it's almost like it doesn't scare us to to stop analyzing, to really say like, oh, I don't have to do that. Like I won't just disappear into thin air, if I stop analyzing
Yes.
myself, thinking about myself, being myself,
Yeah.
I don't know if that's making any sense, but
Well, it does to me as a fellow four.
Yeah.
What I'll say for anybody listening, if you're interested in the Enneagram, there's so many places you can just plug it in online and I can add a link. But it's such a good tool and map for looking at how we relate to presence. Right. And I think the four, Russ Hudson, co-founder of the
Enneagram Institute.
Thank you, Enneagram Institute. I remember him saying in a class I was in with him that the fours are the sacred shadow keepers. And that the fours aren't afraid of the shadow. They're the ones who go in with you. And
That's
nothing
right.
about the human situation is going to surprise a four. There's nothing.
I feel like I've heard it all. And you
Yeah.
know, having been a therapist, having been, there is nothing in the human experience that I haven't heard someone say, I did that, I experienced that, I was that, you
Yep.
know,
Yeah.
yeah.
And that, each of the types looking around the circle so that, think about the head types, think about the heart. It's out of nine, they're out of nine. I make it sound like a test. Listen to my programming. But right, so there's this 9 types, a bunch of subtypes. It's complex and beautiful. But there are 3 head types, 3 heart types, 3 gut types or body types. And so what you're talking about, and I really love this shift from the head to the heart of cultivate sweetness of heart, is just so compelling. And I think about then embodiment and the role of embodiment, which I can imagine is a practice of yours, because we can go to the head and the heart, but then they get in conflict. What happens? What holds both? Okay, the body holds both. What's possible in the body? So what's your way of inviting people into their body?
You know, I'm such a proponent of embodiment because I really do think that we have totally lost touch with all of that wisdom. You know, one of the great things about teaching coaching is, you know, that's always been a big part of the model of the CTI model, and now my own coaching raw model. You know, and so you know, it depends. If the person's a very heady person, they have to have a good enough reason. You know,
Yep.
why would I do that? Like, why would I, you know, this is the smart part, you know,
Yep.
this is, so, you know, I give them some information about why, you know, someone else who's, you know, maybe a little bit more, maybe it's a social fear of, you know, crying or fear of, you know, what might happen or shame or, you know, that I'll try to speak to that, you know,
Yeah.
and some people are so disembodied that they actually can't readily access what's happening
Yeah.
without that mind filter. So it's a practice. You know, it's a coming back to life, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Inhabiting, I know often when I'm starting with corporate retreats, I'm reminding people find your feet. Remember that you have feet,
Right.
right?
Feel your back touching your chair. Like,
Right.
yes, moving the attention around, absolutely.
Yeah, which feels like then engaging the mind and, in good use of imagination to support that embodiment.
I think also helping people re-access their intuition because we all have it and we don't trust it, or we interpret it, we give it over to our mind to create some sort of interpretation, or so I think helping people really notice signs that aren't intellectual is really, really powerful.
Yeah. And so what comes up for me when you said it is like tightness in my gut, or when I'm holding tension in my shoulders, right? When my body's trying to get my attention somehow, or I get a headache, right?
Yeah.
And, because there's so much energy up here and drop that into my spine. But I know I have practices for that.
That's right.
And supporting, part of your gifting, I know, is meeting people where they are. That's the magic of coaching. Right?
Yeah,
But
well, and I love that you said the word practice. That for me now, that has become like you must practice. Like you cannot know your way toward where you want to go. Like you have enough information. You know, we all like the thing about AI that's kind of making me a little crazy. I mean, part of me really loves it. Part of me is kind of like, well, you know, tech bro, blah, blah. But
Yep.
there's the thing that is sad about it to me is that none of us need more information. Like none of us need to rely to obtain any more, you know, thoughts. We actually need to practice what we already know. We need to, you know, moment by moment, open to what's actually happening.
Yeah.
So, you know, all of the knowledge in the books and everything in the world, you know, can be actually a huge distraction from practice.
Yeah. A couple of years ago, I went on an input fast. And it was so much more valuable than I anticipated even it would be.
Yeah.
I wasn't entirely off social media, but because I was still active on for my own business and for my own work. But I quit reading. I quit watching. I quit everything I was subscribing to, and just, it's like, okay, there is so much business going on in here.
That's right.
My practice needs to be choosing and discerning and focusing. And I have a hunch that's a stage of life thing too. As I moved into my 50s, we go through these stages where it's like, okay, gather, make me smarter, give me mentors, help me to, and then the discerning feels like that's where it begins to access wisdom as we cross that threshold. Does that feel true for you too?
Absolutely. You're actually speaking to, I did a series called Liberating Midlife. And it's really about that we are actually, I think 50s is a great time to sort of look at being on a threshold. And here in this tradition, it's the 4 ashrams of life. You're entering the 3rd ashram. And in this culture, we don't have a 3rd ashram of life. We're supposed to cling to the 2nd ashram. So the 1st ashram of life is about being a student. It's about learning and about acquiring knowledge. 2nd ashram of life is householder life, kids, family, money, climb the career corporate ladder. We're just supposed to stay there till we retire and die. But
Right.
but
Yes.
right, just keep going.
Yep.
The 3rd ashram of life, which generally happens around 50, naturally, is beginning to enter the meaning phase, withdrawing, from the noise and the chaos of the world, starting to let go of things, stopping the acquisition of more, reversing the flow, so to speak. And we just don't have any models of that. And so that's something actually I'm pretty passionate about doing something with. I'm not quite sure what yet.
Yeah.
Because I can feel my own resistance to that. I still want to be successful. I still want to be somebody. I still want to.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. The closest that I can think of is when in practices grounded in the sacred feminine and the divine feminine, where you move from maiden, mother, crone.
Yes.
Well, who wants to be crone?
Right.
Like, I'm not ready for that yet. Based on our social training, what that means, there's something about the wise woman makes it more palatable, but still feels like that should be 30 years from now.
Yeah, well, there is a 4th ashram, sannyas, so that is renunciation, right? So, we put our elderly people away in homes, and I mean, sometimes for very good reason, but there is an Indian tradition, the elders hold space. They sit and appreciate their family, and they're tended to, and they just hold this quiet space, so that is
That's gorgeous.
the ultimate elder, the quiet,
Yes.
the peaceful wisdom holder,
Yeah.
who's renounced the world in a way.
Yeah.
And see, we don't even really do that, right? Everybody's
No.
everybody's looking for the 4th marriage and the
That's exactly right. And, this is my skin revealing, is my hair
Right.
revealing, is my body revealing age, and what does age mean, right? This complexity with age,
yeah.
which is just, a whole wild, untamed space unto itself that I feel like is a whole other
God.
podcast.
It is. It really is.
Yeah.
But I think it's a rich opportunity for conscious people to rewrite a narrative that has been, corporatized and, just, it's like, I don't want this to be what it means to be
Yes.
an old person, which I'm fast heading to. And if we're lucky, we all will be.
Right.
Yeah.
And, just remembering we have the opportunity, we have the option to decline. That's a choice we get to make. I decline this narrative. I decline this story. I may not be clear on my own yet, but I decline this. I remember I was driving in the sitting at a red light the other day, and this ad came on TV, and or not on TV, on the radio, because I still listen to the radio every now and again. But listening to the radio, and the ads, I have no idea what it's for, but it started with 80% of men prefer women who. And I'm screaming in the car. I'm like, are we still doing this?
Right.
Is this what we're still doing? And thinking the grief for our young women, you know, our grief for our elder women, the sorrow and outrage for me at this moment in time. Where I'm like, no, I'm not playing that.
Yeah.
And that we just get this constant programming. And so
Yes.
it really strikes me as I was moving into this stage, I have opportunity to decline a lot of the stories that I was offered. And I just took. So tell me about your, talk to me about Coaching Raw. This is just so cool. And what I'm talking about is your podcast, but it's more than that.
Yeah. So it's, I realized after teaching for so many years that there were certain teaching, coaching, and having been a therapist and a social worker in a past life, that there's only so many ways to work powerfully with human beings. And there's ones that work better than others. So,
Love it.
I'm a procrastinator par excellence, but I do love to get together and improv. So really the idea started because I had been doing some intro sessions for CTI, and I was just really enjoying coming in, doing a little demonstration, spending an hour with a group of people, and then done. It was so fun. Yeah, so fun. So I'm like, why don't I just do that for my own stuff? So I started, and I also wanted to play with, a subscription model. I'm kind of all set with the trading time for money thing, or I'm at least looking for, other ways to have an impact that is not sort of the 1-to-1 hour, hourly rate stuff. So if you come live to Coaching Live, Coaching Raw Live, which happens once a week, although we're about to do a July break, but once a week, if you come live, it's free. You can get some pretty good coaching. You can learn about coaching. You can ask questions. You can, and if you want to listen to it on your leisure time, there's a subscription paywall. And, I'm just playing around with that. It feels like a pretty good deal. It's a lot of great stuff happening and good attendance and so exciting. Good. Yeah, it's really fun. And I think from that, Sheila, my intention is, again, blabbing all the stuff in an improvisational way, it's going to eventually turn into something that's a little bit more, it's actually written down and captured, but I do my best work on the, on the fly. So, right. So yeah. It's sort of, I think I will, it will be captured at some point, into, I'm not quite sure what form it wants to be, a coaching manual, maybe a coaching training, that kind of thing.
So great. Congratulations.
Thank you. It's really fun.
Yeah. Oh, I love that for you. And I love that for all of us, actually. So where do people find the session? Like how to get in live? How do you?
Yeah. So if you go to my website, coachingraw.com, and if you go to the podcast tab, you can scroll down and sign up. I just have people sign up and you get an email, you get on the emails, and so just scroll down and go to live, or you can, if you want to subscribe, you can scroll down and subscribe.
That's so great. And I love, I kind of bow to the enthusiasm that I feel from you on that. Yeah. I think it's so great. And I love the experimental vibe of it too. That's something that for me was a sign of life. Mm-hmm. And I'll say coming out of, some dark, hard things, and then realizing, wait, I want to do a podcast because I want to do something fun. And Shannon, it is the funnest thing I've ever done.
Totally. You're good at it too, Sheila. I got to say, you're very good at it.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that.
What's fun about it for you? Yeah.
There is nothing I love that. I love that you're using the word improv, this improvisational space where we get to meet the moment.
Yes.
And I do it in connection with another human, with the
Yes.
intent to be of service.
Yeah.
And, the other thing that, I'll confess, sort of tongue in cheek, is in some ways also, I think this is compensating for the PhD that I thought I'd have by now. So instead of going deeply into the PhD space, I'm talking to such great people and I feel the yes and I feel the no. And I'm because I'm starting to get requests now, which is great. And I just so honor the people who are interested. And I want to be part of that. And I know my yes and I know my no because it's about the quality of the conversation and the quality of service. And I leave just ecstatic. This is probably what drew me to coaching 22 years ago, right? Is the opportunity to be
deep
in that
conversations. Yeah.
absolutely about what is real and breathing life into this crazy, beautiful truth.
Yeah.
That is the more. Yeah.
It's really fun to see you. Like, it really does feel like this is a zone of genius for you, and
thank you.
and it's so fun to find that, and I think there's nothing wrong with the PhD wanter getting their little desires tickled, I think that the probably the failed actor in me is all over the, it's like the or the show off or whatever.
Yeah.
Some part of me that likes attention just loves being, and that's, if you're doing it for good, exactly. It's perfect. It's a perfect use of that desire and my skill set. So
That's exactly right. So great. Anything you want to leave our audience with that we haven't talked about yet?
That's a great question. It's funny. Actually, I think the thing that I have noticed the most recently is just how hard on themselves everyone. God, I can't even figure out how to say that. Everyone is so hard on themselves.
Yes.
And stop. Like, just stop robbing yourself of enjoying your life. There's a lot happening. There's a lot not to enjoy out there, quote unquote. But if you can come into some sort of truce with yourself that you're good enough and you're doing your best, that's my wish for people, to just enjoy this really short life a little bit more.
Yeah. Thank you for that. And I'll just echo or tag onto that again, we've talked about this all the way through. It's a practice. This is not a thing that you get to, you probably that you'll stop today and be cured of tomorrow.
That's
but
right.
It's catching just one thought and replacing it with, oh, that was unkind. Catching it and, oh, what else is possible in that mind space? So thank you for drawing attention to that.
Yeah. So that's it, and come for if you're curious about Sonoma Ashram, I also just want to put in a plug for sonomaashram.org. It's my guru is as generous as it gets. There's hundreds and hundreds of hours of free content available on the website. He was a businessman before, and his guru said, give it away. So he does.
Wow.
So it's just such a incredible resource. And, so that, come see me at coachingraw.com, come see me on Coaching Raw Live.
Yep.
And
check out the ashram. Beautiful. Yeah. Shannon, thank you so much. Such a joy and a delight. Thank you for your heart and your presence today.
Thank you, Sheila. Thank you so much for the invitation. It was really fun.